This is the town of Happy Hill, the most peaceful place you can imagine. Well, today, I'm gonna change that, as I control a psychotic serial killer who shows no mercy. I must wipe out this entire town and take the happy out of Happy Hill. I started my adventure in this alleyway. And this was me. I had a blue jumpsuit and a spooky clown mask, perfect for disguising myself before I absolutely demolished this town. I learned that this game only had arrow key movement and I couldn't use WASD. This was a massive problem as I use a 60% keyboard and I have to press about 3 buttons at once just to even move, but that's an issue for future me. I explored the alleyway and I found myself a trusty ladder. This is mine now. After committing my first crime by stealing a ladder, I found a place I could use it. I climbed the ladder and found myself in someone's home. And this guy right here is our first victim of many. And it was quite the perfect scenario. He just passed out watching Breaking Bad and now I'm gonna break his back. Pause. I took a moment to preach to him about our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ, before ransacking the rest of his house. In the kitchen, I found a knife, and shortly after taking it, there was a sudden music change. I'm sure you can guess what time it is now. Returning to our sleeping victim, I had a kill prompt, and after tapping it, we got straight to business. Yeah, that might have been a little overkill, but this was honestly the most tame murder in this entire video. Trust me. After each kill, we unlock a new tape, with each tape being a different location, different victim, and different murder method. I found myself outside of Lambkin Lane, and I swear this is the place from the Halloween movie. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, I noticed a gnome was sitting next to me, and I decided this was Dave, and he was going to be my partner in crime for the rest of this video. Dave was already coming in handy as he had some keys for me that allowed me to open the gate, and after channeling my inner Spider-Man, I climbed the side of this building and found myself inside. I accidentally intruded this lady taking a bath and quickly left, so I searched her bedroom and somehow made myself look like even more of a creep. I found a radio in her room and it was time for her to go boom. Okay, that was brutal. Moving on to our next location, I found a lawnmower. I thought that maybe I was going to retire the ruthless killing and become a humble gardener instead. However, that wasn't the case. I found a bear trap, set it up next to this tree, and waited. After trapping the poor gardener, I stole his keys and returned to the lawnmower. I'm sure you can see where this is going. All I gotta say is, this guy is creative. I found myself outside yet another home, and I had a prompt to break the window. Without wasting any time, I did just that. And I got snitched on by a dog. I scurried around trying to find a different entrance, but to no avail. That's when I noticed there was currently a thunderstorm. I had to time the breaking of the window with the lightning strike so I don't alarm the guard dog. I did just that and successfully made my way inside the house. Sometimes my genius is almost frightening. I'm just praying this isn't one of those horrors where the dog has to get killed. People? Sure. But leave the damn dog alone. After entering the home, I came face to face with the dog. And unfortunately, I didn't have any treats in my back pocket, so there was no befriending this pup. So instead, I timed the lightning with my movement and managed to sneak past the dog. After making my way upstairs, I found yet another showering victim. This is becoming a very common theme and it's starting to worry me. I tiptoed my way over and stole the keys. And I also found some matches in the boiler room. This was a strange combination of items, so I was puzzled on how to use them. I made my way back downstairs and noticed a door to the left of the dog. After reaching this, I used the keys to unlock it and found a gas can. And it's safe to say that items were now starting to make sense. I returned to the boiler room from earlier, filled it with gas, and returned to what was going to be one of our most horrific murders yet. But honestly, you kind of had it coming. I mean, how are you not going to notice that you're showering in gasoline? After taking a hot shower, I was now outside a cabin in the woods. Very cliche. I found some paint next to this beautiful pickup truck and decided maybe I can become the next Da Vinci. That dream was quickly cut short. And I was pretty upset. I mean, come on. I'm finding all these creative ways to steal your life and you're camping with a gun. This isn't COD, mate. After being shot down, I entered the house and proposed my painting abilities to this lovely man. I don't think he was buying it. Returning to the window, I got shot once again. However, I noticed a prompt to cover the window in paint. So third time lucky, I covered the window in paint and was able to retrieve this chainsaw. I didn't want to enter the house just yet as they'd just shoot me, so I looked for a different solution. I found a breakable bottle, and after smashing that, I hid in this Shrek-like toilet. And speaking of Shrek, who else thinks they've absolutely butchered his design? I was sure the stench of this toilet was going to kill me before I kill him, but not long after he came along and I was able to perform a sneak attack. Our next chapter went a little bit differently, as I found myself playing as a detective. This is Brian Pawlowski, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and Brian over here is going to be investigating our murders to track us down. This is kind of counterproductive, but whatever. Entering the first murder scene, I inspected the window, which was the point of entry. Next was the murder itself. Brian thought there was 16 stab wounds, but he was actually wrong. I counted 17. I also left a message on the wall reading, "I am Raph." Rafe? I don't know, one of the two. The last inspection point was the kitchen, where I took the knife from, and it was now time to snap a photo of the victim. Say cheese! After taking the photo, I had a full document on the victim, Gordon Baker, and it turns out he had a pretty serious criminal record. Yeah. I'm starting to think maybe this serial killer isn't such a bad guy, because I feel no remorse for Gordon over here. I then took control of the killer once again, and you know what, I think we need to give this guy a name. He does have a name, but you're not that far into the video yet to know about it, so keep watching. From now on, he's going to go by the name Bob. Returning back to Bob, I was in some sort of warehouse, and this was actually giving me Bob the Burglar vibes. As there were drones on the ceiling that I had to avoid being spotted by, and I found myself a locked door, but I need an item to unlock it. So, continuing further, I found a crowbar, which was perfect. I wedged the crowbar into the door, forcing it open. In here, I found a sleeping officer, and I noticed a switch was next to him, so I creeped my way over and turned it off. This disabled the drones, and I was able to explore freely, and I finally found the weapon, a nail gun. Returning to the officer, I whipped out my nail gun and gave him a new face. The next tape had a very interesting name, and once again, another shower. I walked up to him and asked if he needed a hand, but he politely declined. I then found this guy who wasn't a fan of my outfit. I'm gonna name him Chad. So I headed back to the showers and got myself all hardened up. In the American football gear. What else was you thinking of? I was now able to pass by Chad into the bathrooms, and oh my god, someone destroyed this toilet. Grabbing the soap and nearly passing out from the smell of that stall, I found myself in the showers again. I placed the soap on the floor, pushed the bench forward, and pulled a fire alarm. I had no idea what to expect here, but this was brutal, and I wasn't even finished. After taking out the showering man, Chad sprinted at me to take revenge. That didn't go too well for him, as I had a helmet and he didn't. In the next tape, I was in an office, and I had to use these shadows to hide from the only worker that was in the building. After sneaking past him, I took an axe and printed him a brand new face. Very photogenic. The next area was probably my favourite one in the whole game. A haunted house. This was my home. I would fit right in. And no one would suspect the guy in the clown outfit to actually be a crazed psychopath, right? I started conversing with these two lovely ladies and asked for their number. They laughed in my face and I ran away. God, this game is so realistic. I then found a familiar face outside of the haunted house, and he thought I was a worker. This was going to be my easiest mission yet. Heading into the haunted house, I found the girls who rejected me earlier. I stopped the ride and they had no idea what kind of horror they were actually in for, as there was a ceiling fan perfectly placed right above them. I climbed my way up these ladders and took a screwdriver, and this allowed me to unscrew the fan and in result, lowering it. The fan was now at head height, and this was the perfect time to boot up the ride again. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. First they laugh in my face and now the ride malfunctions? I'm never going to live down this embarrassment. I returned to the control panel and I had a mini game where I must stop the buttons in the red squares. After this, I returned to the ride as I had some unfinished business. That embarrassment was finally over and I was delighted to see Dave in our next tape. I peeked through this window and found some football players who I can only assume were friends with the ones from before. And it turns out that guy actually was called Chad. They weren't very happy with me and they had weapons, so I had to be extremely careful. I found a power switch and flicked it off. This turned off the lights and I was able to enter the window. At the staircase, the first player was clearly horrified of the dark, but I didn't want to take my chances as he had a gun pointed right at me. However, in the kitchen, I found the lid to a trash can and I was able to use this as a shield to deflect his bullets. Don't try this at home. After that guy took himself out from it, the second player was upstairs using a bed for cover. This guy also had a gun, so I didn't want to risk it. However, I took these keys and headed outside to unlock a shed, which I then took some ladders from. Placing the ladders, I was able to climb onto the roof and there was just a thin wall separating us. However, I was still missing an item. So I continued to explore and after returning upstairs, I found an attic that I could reach with my ladders. And in the attic was a machete, something that was definitely sharp enough to penetrate the walls of this house. I hurried back to the roof while I still had time and put my machete to work. After taking out the remaining football players, I returned back to my detective role, and this time we were investigating the shower murder. There are multiple of those, so specifically the hot one. No, not that one. This one. Inside the murder home, I found the entry point, along with that a piece of cloth. This was terrible news, as I had left evidence behind and possibly even DNA, and the bathroom was a very interesting sight, to say the least. I left another message reading, "I am retribution," and I snapped a photo of the victim. This guy was known as Hank Wallace. He also had a pretty serious criminal record, drunk driving and arson. That's ironic. After reading the investigation report, luckily there were 0 DNA matches for my ripped clothes. However, Detective Pavolsky now knew that I wore a janitor suit. The detective also noticed the fact I was targeting people with criminal records, and even went as far as calling me a vigilante. I mean, he's not wrong. I'm basically Spider-Man just without the webs. Our next tape was Death from Below, and it was time to get my toes wet. Taking a dip in the lake, there was a fisherman. He had a light on his gun, so I had to carefully swim by, and submerge myself each time the light got a little bit too close. At the end of the lake, I found myself a harpoon gun, and it was time to go fishing. Our next murder location was a motel. The door had been left unlocked and this allowed me to take keys to the motel rooms. The first room had nothing but a TV, which I believe was a Ring reference, and in the second one I found a coat hanger. The murder music started and I knew it was time. There was one more motel room to enter. However, she turned me down after knocking and I had to wait until she fell asleep. After creepily waiting by this bush, it was time to take her out. After all this hard work, I decided I deserve a nice meal, so into the diner we go. The chef shouted at me to leave the diner as it is closed, but I had other plans. I used this trolley to hide and make my way into the kitchen. He would occasionally turn his head and I'd have to stop moving. But other than that, this was a pretty simple kill, and after getting close enough, I turned him into a medium rare steak, and I was nice enough to give him a side of coffee on top of that. Next, I found myself in a cornfield, the trademark of every horror movie to ever exist. Making my way through the corn, there was a farmer, and he had a gun, so I had to be smart about this one. I stole his rake and headed in the opposite direction, and got caught in my very own trap that I used earlier. So, trying that again, I disabled the bear trap. Okay, at this point I was getting a little bit frustrated, as not only do I need to use my arrow keys to move, but my right arrow key is also jammed, which means just one press of it equals to about 5 of them. And considering I have to slowly move to the right and avoid the bear traps, this wasn't ideal. I decided to take matters into my own hands and try to fix my right arrow key. However, I couldn't find my tool to take the key out of the keyboard, so I resulted into using a dart. After placing the key back in, the issue still wasn't fixed, so I decided to just suck it up and try my best. A few more deaths later, I finally got through the cluster of bear traps. I found a new rake after using my other one to disable the traps, and I then turned on the bale maker before hiding in the corn. The farmer came along and it was time for him to get close and personal with his crops. I shoved him into the bale maker and turned him into a stack of hay. Our next scenario was very interesting. I was sat at the back of this train, minding my own business and reading my newspaper. Who I can only assume is my victim was sat right in front of me. And in front of her, the one and only detective who is currently trying to track me down. My victim had left the train and I had to follow her without being spotted. And there was one section of this mission that was extremely difficult, especially with my current right arrow key situation. And it's safe to say this took a little while. But I finally did it and had her cornered with a pipe. This was my most hard-worked murder yet, and nothing was going to get in the way of it. After nearly getting busted by the detective, I vanished into the darkness. However, I couldn't get the kill, so we still have some business to finish. For now though, I was back in the role of Brian, at the scene of the murder we had just committed. With the blood of the victim, I wrote the words, hate and death. After taking a photo of yet another murder, I was left shocked to see Bill McSawyer actually had no criminal record. I was under the impression we were a vigilante, wiping out the horrible criminals of the world. However, this guy had done nothing wrong. Why did he deserve to die? The detective had nicknamed me the Pale Grin, which I thought was a great choice. And it was now time for the Pale Grin to tie up any loose ends. I was going after the girl from earlier, however, this was not going to be easy, as she had a whole police patrol sitting outside her home for protection. Dave's family had come to greet me, and they gifted me with a chain. Instead of wearing it around my neck like a gangster, I decided it would look much better around the police officer's neck instead. I think he agrees. Entering the house, I made my way upstairs, and the bedroom seemed to be empty. But little did I know, this girl was much smarter than I thought. She jumped out of the closet bearing a knife and actually fought back. However, she quickly realised no one can defeat the Pale Grin and she made a run for it. She didn't make it too far. Looking over her battered corpse, the Pale Grin was apologetic. He said that Madison was the only kind one. This changes a lot of things. It seems like the people we are targeting are people that we know, or maybe people from the past. However, if Madison was the only kind one, why did we hunt her down? Moving on, I was now in a hospital. The nurse made what I thought was a joke about me being the therapy clown. Turns out she was actually dead serious. There's only enough room for one of us in this town, mate. I couldn't kill the clown, however, so I focused on my current task, which was to kill Dr. Hawkins. I found a clipboard which shows Dr. Hawkins was working in surgery. Good to know. I explored further and found a wanted poster of myself. I quickly ripped this down and earned an achievement. This doctor wouldn't let me past as I wasn't a surgeon, so I had to find a disguise. And I found the perfect one in the changing rooms. I strolled on by into the medical supplies closet and found myself a defibrillator. I took it and made my way into the surgery room where I plugged out this girl's life support. And honestly, she needs to stop hugging the plug sockets. My phone's on 2%, man, come on. After pulling the plug, I hid behind a curtain and waited for Dr. Hawkins to come by and see what's going on. And it's fair to say he was pretty shocked. In the next tape, I found myself outside of a bar by the name of Mad Jack's. Today was Metal Monday, and what better way to celebrate than by cutting the power. After cutting the power and entering the bar, I was caught off guard. This was all a trap, and now I had to fight for my life against a gang of bikers, with whatever weapons I could find in this bar. I took the first few out with a snooker cue, before getting stabbed myself. I tried again, and this wasn't any easier. If I attack just the tiniest bit too early, it's gonna cost me my life. I have to be extremely precise. And as you can see, I was wiping out the left area quite easily. However, the right, not so much. As pressing my right arrow key just once made me take this many steps. And the amount of times that this got me killed is honestly insane. After a countless amount of attempts, and me raging at my keyboard after every death, I finally did it. After taking out all of the bikers, the barman ran away. And after what he just put me through, he's getting the worst death of them all. After leaving that god-awful bar, I had mastered the art of disguise, as this guy couldn't tell any difference between the skinny lady mannequins and me. After making my way back to the store, I acquired a sledgehammer. And after finally catching up with the worker from before, this happened. Apparently I squeezed my way through this vent to escape the ambush, and this building was flooding with SWAT members. Luckily for me, I had plenty of hiding spots as well as my sledgehammer. I cleared the room and moved on into the toy shop. There was only one threat in this room, so after taking him out and moving on, I found a locked door. However, it was no match for my sledgehammer, but the next area wasn't so easy. Patience was key here. I had to slowly take out each one of them without being spotted. My elite stealth skills paid off as I didn't get spotted once. Moving upstairs, this guy was lacking and having a smoke break instead of searching for me, so he had to feel the wrath of my sledgehammer. Hey, I don't make the rules. I squeezed myself through yet another vent and now things got interesting. I took this SWAT member hostage and was able to not only use him as a human meat shield, but I had control of his gun as well. It's safe to say I was unstoppable at this point. After wiping out the entire police force, I took the elevator downstairs and stole a van to escape. Back to my detective life, I was at the home of Madison. At the scene of the crime, I wrote the words, "I am sorry" in Madison's blood. I guess it's the thought that counts. However, in the bedroom, I found something much more interesting. A class group photo of Madison at West Pine High School. Most of the classmates in this photo were also victims of the pale grin. I also found out that the school had burned down a year ago, and now everything is slowly starting to connect. The school had burned down in 1982 due to unknown reasons, and everyone had made it out alive except for the janitor, John Wade. His body was never found, and Sherlock over here thinks that the killer is John Wade, taking revenge on the rest of the school. And it seems like he was right, as we were now back in 1982, 30th of June, the day of the fire. And we can finally see the pale grin without the mask, also known as John Wade. Making my way out of this classroom, I didn't seem to be too popular among the school. Everyone was extremely rude to me, except for one girl, Madison. I scurried away into my janitor's closet, and it seemed I had developed an unhealthy obsession with Madison, as I had pictures of her on my wall. While admiring the picture, smoke started emerging from underneath the door, and it was of course the football guys from before. Who else? They tried to pull a prank on me, which in result backfired massively, and instead of helping me out of the burning building that they caused, they ran away and left me trapped. And to this day, I still live in that janitor's closet, wearing my mask to hide what the fire did to my face. And I had one goal left, and that was to set traps around the school, as a detective would be here any minute now. So I set a bunch of bear traps in the hallway for protection, and returned to grab a weapon. I then swapped back to the detective's point of view, who was ready to breach the school and put an end to this. I shot the lock down to open the gate, and it was time to enter West Pine High. I traversed my way through the darkness, disabling any bear traps on the way, and I found the janitor's closet. Apparently John even made tapes of his killings. I found an open vent which he must have used to escape, so I followed him through with no hesitation. It was time for the final showdown. The pale green was sprinting at me from the darkness, and I had to be quick enough to react and shoot him in time. As you can guess, it was very difficult to turn left and right with my current key situation, so I decided the best way to do this was to sit in a corner and let him come to me. This way he only had one attack point, and after a few more bullets, the pale grin was no more. That was the Happyhills Homicide, and that game was a bunch of fun. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you made it this far, and let me know down below if you'd like to see me play the sequel to this game when it releases. That's going to be it for this one though, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.